Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, the Masterpiece Society. Yeah, that's what they call us on the Reddit threads, the Masterpiece Society. That's the way they refer to me, Jimmy-Jerome, and Keith. The Masterpiece Society on It's All Been Checked Before. Speaking of masterpieces, check us out on Facebook. It's All Been Checked Before, written just like it sounds, just like it's written where you found us here. Follow us on Facebook. Get involved with us. I gotta tell you, our memes are getting funnier and funnier. You get in with us. Get in with us on that, and get in with this Masterpiece Society on It's All Been Checked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Some of your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are down Keith because we wanted to get the perfect. No, I'm kidding. That would not be without Keith. So
Keith is in the mirror dimension, I think. The mirror universe this week.
Keith is we're recording on a Saturday morning, which is unusual, and forgot to watch the episodes. So, yep, he forgot, which is fine. He will be back. I almost did. Yeah, full disclosure, I almost did as well. I have a feeling he's going to forget next week's episode as well. Just a feeling. Not that we record two of these at once, back to back or anything. But then I assume he'll be back after that. So, the Masterpiece Society, first impressions.
Just from the title, I was like, oh, this is going to be a perfect kind of society or whatever. And we probably discussed the synopsis last week. But yeah, I thought it was like a maybe even more talky version of First Contact 2 is what I thought of. Because it is another First Contact. And
to an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, they're humans, so can you really consider it a First Contact? But
Right. It was kind of like that, but it's got into kind of the same kind of, should we be interfering here? Have we done bad things here? And that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought it raised a lot of interesting things. I thought it was more of this almost sounds bad, a cerebral episode than an action episode, which I think is fine. I mean, some of the best ones are, and there was enough action with diverting the cube or whatever. And then I guess if you want to count Troy and Connor as action, there was that action too. So overall, I think I don't know if I liked it as much as First Contact, but I thought it raised some interesting issues. Whether I agree or disagree with how the Enterprise handled it, we'll get into that.
Yeah, honestly, I was expecting this one to be boring. I was expecting to be a forgettable episode. And I'm not saying it's super memorable. It is kind of forgettable, but at the same time, it was better than I expected. I was pleasantly surprised that it was decent. I'm not going to put it at the top of the season or anything, but I was expecting to put it near the bottom, and now I'm like, maybe it's middling. Maybe even middle high.
Yeah, as someone who's always like, well, why does every episode have to be the end of the world? I had the same feeling like, I don't know how high the stakes are here. And there were the stakes of the thing crushing them and destroying the colony, which high stakes, sure. But as soon as that was quelled, or we knew that was going to happen, there was the other. I guess there are big stakes here for them, but not exciting stakes, I guess, for viewers. It was good. It's not going to be, it didn't blow me away.
So we started out with them making that call to the planet. At first they're not answering, and then they keep trying, and then finally somebody answers. And it's Aaron Connor, played by John Snyder, who is the head of the colony. John Snyder is best known for The Warriors, Akira, and Eraser, among other things. He's got 132 credits.
Yeah, a lot of voice credits, I think.
Yes, he does a lot of English voices for anime and stuff, it looks like.
Yeah.
So he was in a previous episode of The Next Generation. I don't know if you remember, but he was in The Enemy, which was the Geordi Romulan stranded on the planet episode.
The Enemy Mine episode, yeah.
Yeah, he was the Centurion in that one. So yeah, he was in that, but this is his first time playing human. It is his last Trek credit. But anyway, he's on the call. He's answering. And the thing about the call that I enjoyed was Ron Canada pacing in the background. Ron Canada playing Martin Benbeck. Ron Canada best known for Wedding Crashers, National Treasure, Lone Star. He did 3 episodes of The Orville as an admiral recently. He's in an episode of Voyager. He's in an episode of Deep Space Nine as different characters. But also, the West Wing is probably where I know him best. He played the Undersecretary of State. Tons of stuff. Love Ron Canada. So I was looking forward to him. And just the background acting he was doing thrilled me. Like the reactions where he like wanted to speak and then didn't. I'm just like, you're getting your paycheck today, Ron Canada.
The conflict for the episode was set up immediately, just without even a line. Yeah.
But I also liked that the conflict was also explained away where Aaron's like, yeah, but that's his job. He's bred to be disagreeable.
Right.
Question my orders.
I can't remember. I read it on one of Ron Canada's things that his nickname's the Judge, I think.
Okay.
He plays so many judges and people like that. And in this one, he's like the Supreme Court justice of the planet or whatever. Yeah. He's the interpreter of the intentions of the people who created the colony.
Right. And he's an originalist. By which I mean he's made up stuff that he thinks the founders believed in, but probably isn't true. The whole Second Amendment.
We'll get deeper into this, but this is kind of like a right-wing episode. A
little bit.
And we'll get deeper into it, but there's an anti-abortion message in here too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's geneticizing genetics, but it's also anti-abort. It's and we'll get into that when we get there, but.
Well, you get the argument here too about where do personal freedoms interact, or how do they compare with the needs of the society? Yeah. And sacrificing for the greater good, which used to be the conservative mindset, but is now the liberal mindset.
Yes.
Whereas the conservatives are ultra, I need my freedom, and yet I feel like I was sympathetic to the I need my freedom people because of overstepping, going too far into the taking away the freedoms for the good of society.
Right. And I will say the fact that I think this episode does make you see both sides, and I end up leaning more towards you've opened Pandora's box. You've opened Pandora's box here. And now that these guys know that these worlds are out there, and keeping them there seems like and again, now we're back to the Soviet kind of thing from this era, which I guess the Soviet Union was just done being a thing, or is about to be done being a thing. I can do great things here, but that's it. And we don't want you to know about anything going on out there. There's no need for you to get together with other people on the planet. And well,
that's just controlling. That's feeding you a false narrative. It lets you set what the truth is versus letting people determine for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder how much. I mean, obviously, the political parties have been shifting in the last couple of decades, and I wonder, because I was still a child when this aired, how it would have felt at the time it aired, whether it seemed like a more liberal or conservative. Although you're right, it does a good job of making both sides of the case.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, watching it then, if I would have been more inclined to be like, well, no, I think I would always be for by a small margin, because my issue overall with in the episode between the people who are like, we got to keep things the same and we can't let them go. I didn't understand why their society would crumble. Because the argument is, it changes from, it's not like the Khan thing of we're genetically superior. It's we're genetically, the argument changes from we're genetically superior to we're genetically designed to be a diplomat, an interpreter of things, a scientist, so if we lose these 10, 20 people, everything's going to be chaos. It's like, well, it seems like that means other people will fill the roles if they're genetically superior.
Well, I think that's the thing, though, is they're bred for certain roles and they don't have the ability to adapt and fill a role they weren't bred for. So if there's 5 cooks and 3 of them leave, now you have 2 cooks feeding this entire society. You know what I mean? So I think that's where the chaos comes into it.
I guess they definitely believe you cannot teach an old dog new tricks on this.
Right.
But isn't there somebody who's designed to be a trainer or a teacher, and they can teach, they can train others.
And I did kind of like where they asked about accidental death, and he just kind of blew it off, like, "Oh, that almost never happens. Don't worry about it." Okay, well, what if all 5 chefs, going to my argument, are together, and piece of rock falls and kills them all?
Right. They were never allowed to travel in the same car.
Right. Yeah, I think there was definitely a Nazi argument in this too of perfect society and genetic manipulation. I do appreciate Ron Canada's presence in that if they looked like the Society from Justice back in season 1, it would have had such strong Nazi vibes. And by including Ron Canada, and I'm sure there were other background actors because there were only 3 like front and center actors, but I'm sure there were other background actors of other ethnicities and body types. But I was like, okay, so they are definitely talking about not just physical perfectness in terms of like he wasn't in shape. He's a larger guy is what I mean there. Right. And then also not racial purity because honestly, if you're genetically engineering, you want to mix of races, right? So you get the best of everybody's genes.
I wrote, this kind of cuts against that, but was kind of agrees with you. I wrote genetically engineered. Well, why aren't they better looking? The Justice Planet, that's the planet you want to model yourself on. But
because they're not genetically engineered for physical beauty. Right. They're engineered for purpose.
Yeah.
Which is a genetic engineering I approve a little bit more of. Not that I approve of genetic engineering.
Right.
But, so for instance, breeding blindness out. And this is the question that also is like, where do you draw the line? Because, there's the argument against... some people don't believe abortion should be legal for babies with Down syndrome.
Right.
And so there's the argument of, well, people with Down syndrome have some severe limitations in life. They can't necessarily function completely independently and do everything. And it depends because there's a spectrum, of course, and some people with Down syndrome can and some people can't. And where do you draw that line? Same that, deaf people and blind communities may argue they're not a disability at all. They just rely on other senses more and totally get that. Whatever, if you're alive, you're going to do what you can. But if we had the choice to breed out blindness or deafness or Down syndrome or any of those things, do we do it? And I think there is a real moral quandary here where it's hard to say yes or no definitively in my mind. Because on one hand, absolutely, you don't want to make people feel illegitimate and their existence is valid for sure. But if somebody that is blind could have been born with sight or somebody that has Down syndrome could have been born without it. But then I guess the other argument is, well, in this society, maybe they're just not born at all. And is that right? And so you get into these really weighty issues that I don't feel have really clear black and white answers.
Yeah, again, I wish I
send your complaints to that argument to Keith at IABDpresents.com.
But no, I think that's some of the and I'm trying to think if this was around the time, amniocentesis kind of started being a thing, but being able to know that stuff. And I guess the longer you genetically engineer, the more you weed that stuff out. That stuff. I know that sounds dismissive, and I'm certainly not trying to sound that way. But because Jordy's argument later is, well, then I wouldn't have been born.
Right.
I guess the counter argument is, you would have been born. You just would have had sight. But
would he have? Because it sounded like, I think that was the thing the other guest star that we'll talk about in a second, Hannah, confirmed. Like if they looked at the embryo and knew that embryo was blind, they would have just terminated the pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
that's where it gets messy.
And maybe that's why it's their body, their choice. But that's a completely different episode. Although again, I think Jordy is making that, we've definitely seen that pitch, Tim Tebow, the great Heisman Trophy winner football player, he did so. His part of his whole, I'll call it a stump speech for lack of a better term, but his mom was young and considered getting an abortion, and if she hadn't, then Florida wouldn't win the national championship, and we would have had Tim Tebow in the.
Maybe they would have. Maybe they would have had a different player that did it.
But to also go to later argument this episode, he's also somebody who he does. He did missionary stuff for a couple years. He did missions, not that kind of missionary stuff. But part of their thing is, and I think this is a lot of missions, but I don't want to speak for all of them. But they offer assistance to communities that need it, and but only if the community says they'll convert to Christianity. So do your own reading on that. But that but that's also to me that's similar to this episode. Like, should they be going in, and if they are converting people, they're helping people, but they're also insisting they convert. And, now we're down another rabbit hole of, hey, I convert to Christianity. Give me that food and water. I'll convert to whatever you say, as long as you get food and water. But that's not a good thing. Is that a good thing either? But that's not exactly what this episode gets into. But yeah.
If I'm genetically engineering the perfect society, I'm engineering religion out of it and football.
Right.
No football fans. So Tim Tebow's gone in any sense of the word.
As much as I love football as an Eagles fan, that might not be the worst thing.
I mean, you wouldn't know any better because we would have just terminated you in the womb since you were predisposed to like football. No. Obviously, that is where you go with the overreach and the too far, and that
would ruin today's podcast because since Keith let
it would just be me by myself.
That's right.
In which case, everything spoken on here would be completely correct and accurate.
Or there'd be a better version of
all the opinions would be right.
That's right.
Yeah, you can have your own opinion, or you can agree with me. Sure. Either way. No. So this society is a human colony that's been around for 200 years. So that puts it back a little bit before the show Star Trek Enterprise, I believe. So it must be relatively close to Earth because they couldn't have gotten very far. They would have had warp drive, but not like a great warp drive to get too far, which begs the question, how did they get forgotten and missed all this time if they're that close to Earth? But that's just a logistical thing, I guess.
They're isolationists. I mean, because they have the ability to move about the universe, but they don't want to.
Yeah, no, they clearly came and founded this colony just to like make this their place.
Yeah.
So, that's all well and good, but yeah, I was a little confused on the logistics, unless like the god Apollo came and transported them or something, or Tree Lane did it.
Right.
I mean, in Discovery, we'll get to human colonies that are much further away from much earlier in time, and there's explanations for it. But yeah, there's definitely something here. So I did wonder, how does Ron Canada know as soon as Geordi beams down? I'll just keep calling him Ron Canada. I know his name is Mark Bedbeck. Yeah. But how does he know Geordi is blind? How does he know that's just not a fancy accessory to wear, the visor? Like, before he even meets him, he's like, oh, you're blind.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, because are those common? I feel like those aren't common in the universe. And definitely not.
No, and certainly not with the level of technology they had.
Yeah.
Which brings up another wide debate that Hannah brought up. Hannah Bates, played by Day Young, who is best known. She's the third guest star here, and she's best known for Pretty Woman. She was the snobby saleswoman. Spaceballs. She was a waitress. Rock and Roll High School, and this episode, which seems odd because she's got 113 credits.
Yeah.
So this episode doesn't seem like what she should be best known for. In terms of Star Trek, she was just on a Trek Untold podcast. She did an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, episode Deep Space Nine, 3 different characters, and no Seinfeld, which you'd think she would be on Seinfeld.
I was sure there was going to be a Seinfeld credit.
No. But she brings up the point, like, we're supposed to be so advanced, but we haven't developed all this technology that you've developed. And they talk about necessity being the mother of invention. And I thought that was a really interesting debate. Like, if you don't have the issues, why would you, solve issues you don't have?
Oh, that's that. Yeah, that's very true. And I thought it was, I've said before, like, why would all these planets evolve the same way? And this would also be an example on that. And I guess they answered why. It's like, well, why haven't you developed the way all these other worlds have? And it makes sense that it would be, well, we decided not to. We decided to isolate ourselves. And, and again, I make the Soviet Union parallel there. The Soviet Union made a lot of huge technological advances, and their development was a lot different than ours. But then, they weren't even aware of a lot of other stuff, or it just wasn't able to come in. And I guess China was in a similar position, but now, all of that's changed, obviously, since they've opened up the world. And depends on who you talk to, whether that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that the whole world shares and everything, even the internet.
Yes, I agree.
As long as they're sharing this podcast, that's it's doing its thing.
Now you sound like one of those globalist liberal elites.
That's me.
Me too. Troy really got flirty with Aaron quick, right away.
Yeah.
And you'd think he would be bred not to go after outsiders and to preserve the society over anything else, especially being the leader.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Or as far as like, man, she got into him right away, which I don't think in the enemy Troy was into the Centurion, if I recall. But you know,
No,
I
think so.
get it's just like I guess she was just like, oh, he's a diplomat and he leads this world and he's open to these things. You know, they have that little exchange of, well, you have to be the same way as a counselor, I'm sure, or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
I think it was more, he's hot.
Yeah.
In her mind.
Well, I did write Get a Room already. And then I wrote, you know, and then, you know, during their courtship, I also wrote, you know, if it was a genetically engineered planet, wouldn't they have better taste in music and better hair? But that was my other knock on. I'm knocking on their hair. So
no, they're bred to appreciate the classical music. It's a planet of snobs.
That's right.
Picard is super judgmental as soon as the genetic engineering topic comes up. I don't blame him, but man, he's very prejudiced. He already has his views.
Yeah, drawing the line in the sand there right away. I ended up coming down with him on this is a bad thing. And I get him questioning, did we do the right thing coming here? And I have some notes on that later too. But yeah, I don't know if I agree with him whether that it was a bad thing. But yeah, he immediately there's no doubt where he stands on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to back up a little bit chronologically, when they're like, well, you can beam down your own party, we'll let them in here, you know, but we're not gonna come up there. And I was like, well, this is gonna go well. But yeah. And I thought it was going to be a classic, oh, we captured him kind of thing, but it wasn't. So I give them credit for that not happening.
Yeah, Geordi, when he and Hannah go up on the ship, which I thought they were going to like do a romantic thing with them, but they didn't. I think that might have been more interesting to me than to actually see Geordi in a healthy relationship, because this is the point of the series where Geordi starts being a good character, if you've noticed this season.
Yes.
And I loved him in this episode, and I loved how offended he was by the way their society acted and how he would have not been in it. And also like, hey, this just proves how wrong you are, because my visor, the technology from the blind man's what saved the day. So it wasn't just a convenience thing of, oh, I'm thinking about this, we're talking about this unrelated thing and it solves the answer. It also was a whole argument. It's kind of clever.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on we're all coming around on Geordi. He's getting to be a normal person, not a super geek and a creep.
We don't mind super geek. It's the creep part. For the record, we're geeks too, or at least I am. I shouldn't speak for you, but
and if you've been listening to our show this season, we've become less creepy and more, but stay just as.
I hope so. I really hope so. If you think we're still creepy, your letters go to Keith at IABDpresents.com.
That's right.
It's not as fun to do it when he's not here. It's more fun to do it to his face.
I hope he hears the pod. I hope he listens to this.
Oh, I assume he will. We'll see. Then Troy and Aaron go on the piano date, which, that wouldn't have been my ideal music, but it wasn't bad. Yeah, I wouldn't have minded it so much.
That's where I came up, because it was fine. I thought the kid playing piano, his hair was very bad 80s hair, so that's why I was like, at that point, that hair should have been genetically engineered to be better.
So we're going to do fashion?
Fashion. It was run-of-the-mill fashion on the planet.
There is definitely like a very generic version of fashion that Next Gen does so often for future. I feel like the original series had so many different outfits, and Next Gen got a little lazy here, or budget, or whatever.
I've been watching a couple of shows lately that are set in the 80s, or at least that their season's set in the 80s, and I feel like a lot of the TNG planets like this, the clothes are what people now look back and think of the colorful, weird clothes of the 80s. That what the cool people in the 80s were wearing, it was very like this, and maybe that's what the TNG people are thinking. Well, we'll just kind of modify some of these clothes a little bit so it looks like the future, even if it's not that far in the future and not that good. Yeah, they're not drab, but they're not interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hannah was the best dressed, although Ron Canada was pretty well dressed.
Yeah.
Certainly the background actors were not well dressed at all.
No. And this episode did a little better than this one. Usually I rag on, well, it's an entire planet of people. We saw 20. This one is like, well, it's a colony. So maybe if we only see 40, that's okay. It's a specifically engineered colony. So yeah, I'll back up again. They talk about they don't know if they want to do the transporter. They don't want the transporter coming down because that kind of energy or whatever. Why not a shuttle? Wouldn't that work? Wouldn't that have solved the problem?
Could they get through the dome? Does the dome open, or is it a closed dome?
Was the dome closed for environmental reasons?
Yes, that planet wouldn't have been habitable.
Okay. So yeah, I guess they.
Well, we don't know if there's an airlock for the dome that they could fly into or not. They didn't really get into the logistics of the dome.
Yeah, but I thought that might have helped because they could have. They have spacesuits on the Enterprise.
They do, but we never see them.
We never see them, but based on what I've seen in other.
Yeah, they do. They do. I wish we saw them more, but
yeah.
This brings me to my least favorite part of the episode, or I guess the cheesiest, most laughable part, is when Troy and Aaron are on their date and they start talking about Humpty Dumpty and they recite it so joyfully.
Yes.
Like it's this thing they both think is awesome. And I'm like, it's freaking Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was like, yeah. It made me rethink. Like, I get that Humpty Dumpty was not a religious, a political satire thing whenever in its time, but still, yeah, it seemed a bit much.
It did. Though I didn't hate, as much as I was frustrated with Troy for even getting involved with him because she should know better and, she keeps putting herself in the position with him. I did not hate the after date where they kiss as wrong as it is and she's like, I can fall in love with you so easily. And then, I know they don't talk about it explicitly, but she spends the night.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a little further than Next Gen usually goes with the relationships. And I appreciated that.
I'm fuzzy on why it's wrong, which maybe speak to my issues in my own personal life, but I thought, not now, not current day me, but in general, in my past me.
Well, they are two consenting adults, but it's wrong because she is a senior officer on a ship, and they're concerned about interfering with the society, and she is actively interfering with the society.
It's a conflict. Yeah, I get that. Okay, that I guess.
Professional conflict. Yes.
That makes sense. Well, I guess, and maybe this is because I'm such a Kurt guy that I feel like he did this cross this line.
Every week? No, it was not every week, as we know.
In my mind, now I'm with the people who think that was every episode, but it definitely happened. But So I think that helps me. It's that right. How can it be wrong? I can't believe they didn't say that. I also can't believe there were no Khan references in this episode. With all that,
oh, you would think so with the genetic engineering and everything. Yeah. Absolutely.
They get into a talk about no free will, which I thought was interesting. And I don't know if the science was quite around then, and I don't know it well enough and can't relate it well enough. But there are scientific theories that really, none of us have free will. We just react to chemical impulses in our body. Mm-hmm. Our body, even though we think we're thinking through it and coming to a rational decision or even an emotional decision, it's really just chemical impulses that are making it happen. So none of us have true free will. And they've studied small creatures or, small on level. So yeah, maybe, and I thought they might get deeper into that, but I feel like in this episode it was probably more along the lines of, like we talked about earlier, the Soviet kind of thing. Like, well, you were bred, and I think that in Soviet Union, now I'm doing a Yakov Smirnoff bit, but you were born, Class C, labor, so that's what you have to do. That's your lot in life. So I guess that's an anti-communist thing maybe there. But I think that's where they were going with the free will thing. But I got more into a more base level of, well, is there free will in science? Some science is suggesting there isn't, which, begs the theory that Keith didn't have free will to do this week's podcast. Other factors affected it. He didn't have a choice. But that's a completely different episode. A different subject.
Well, what you're saying is a lot of why I liked this episode more than I expected to, because it gives us a lot to think about and discuss and talk over. More, I want to say it's more than the sum of its parts. It's better than it appeared on screen because of all the after effect you get from it. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. It's and we definitely like the episodes that get into sci-fi concepts or thinking concepts, and it's like a kid throwing in everything, or including the kitchen sink in this one, which isn't a bad thing. And I think it helped me get past the replacement level, just kind of flat rest of the episode, which I think bumped it up for me. I thought Troy's confession, I appreciated that she confessed to Picard. I was surprised she didn't say full disclosure, but I feel like that wasn't a term yet. Now it's usually a glib. It's usually I read it more as a bit these days. Full disclosure,
Yeah.
But I was surprised she didn't use those terms. But I'm thinking 30 years ago, maybe that wasn't.
I don't think it was.
Definitely fully disclosed, but they didn't say full disclosure. Here's what I did.
Yeah, I think you're correct. We get back up to the ship. We see the core fragment that they're worried about. So this is like the core of a star or something, but it's like so round. I feel like it should be a misshapen, jagged something.
I agree, because it was misleading. I mean, the effect itself looked fine, but I agree with you. Look, I expected something, like he's amoeba-like or whatever, something, not a perfect sphere. Coming towards him, which maybe that made it easier for him to push it away or whatever. But
it would. I mean, the reason planets and stuff are around is because gravity interacting with them. But this thing was like flung across space. There's nothing interacting to reshape it into a round ball.
Right, anyway. Right.
Yeah, that bothers me. But the scene with the tractor beam where they moved it, I thought was well done. It was appropriately tense. I appreciated the drama of the scene. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like the excitement of, and we, in theory, this happens every week, but this one, whether it's, I think the excitement of the Hannah character being like, oh man, I contributed, and this is so amazing, and this is so exciting. I guess I think that's what made it for me, because if you're on the Enterprise, like, we do this every week, in theory.
Yeah, and I never really felt that there was a stake that it could go wrong. I was pretty confident it was going to go right, but still.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of connected to her and attached to her. Like, her excitement makes me very excited. Like, she's like, it worked. I did this. I made a difference in the world, in the universe.
Aww.
So, yeah.
Of course, then we go down and she's like, oh my God, it's leaking. We got to evacuate anyway. I don't think I can fix this. And I did buy it. I was like, oh, is that the easy way they're going to end this?
Me too. But
I thought it was way more interesting what the truth was her trying to sabotage things so they could leave.
Yeah, I did too, and I liked that it was Geordi that figured it out, and
with the visor that she wouldn't have expected.
Exactly, and I think it goes to the it wasn't a cut and dry like, you can't do this. This is the wrong thing. He was like, I get why you're doing this, but I want to know why you're doing this. And then he was like, that's terrible. He was just like, okay, I get it, but we need to we need to discuss this because this isn't right.
Well, I think the leader wanted to go with her, but realized as the leader he couldn't. Aaron would have had Aaron been a normal citizen, a regular citizen. I think he would have chosen to leave.
Yeah.
They make that whole big argument about how Picard makes, if we grant these people asylum, it destroys the society, but we destroyed the society just by being there. And there's that whole. I do think the argument was a little thin when he said, what was more damaging, us just being here or the asteroid or the core fragment wiping him out? And I'm like, no, they get to live now. So the asteroid would have been more damaging.
That's not even close.
No. I mean, yes, you disrupted their way of life, but they have the chance to adapt now, whereas they wouldn't before. So I thought it went a little far, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Starfleet regulation isn't, we can't interfere at all. And I mean, I feel like they always choose that we're going to save these people. And if we can do it without them knowing we're here, great. In this instance, they couldn't.
Right.
So I feel like that's always, I mean, it's not like you're a cameraman on a documentary and you're watching the baby sea turtle get killed by the bird on its way to, you can do something. So you should do it. It definitely improves things. So yeah, that was my last note too, or I have a couple other notes before that, but my last night of the episode was like, because Picard's argument was that it's like, well, no, they had to live, and I thought the lesson of the episode in a way was his thing, saying, well, if they'd stayed the same, that would be better. And I'm like, I wrote, this is a Star Wars thing, but it's also a Star Trek thing, I think, too, or Universal thing, and a Star Wars one. It's time to let the old ways die, let the old things die.
Yeah.
And then we find a new, if they're all engineered a certain way or whatever, some of them, whatever world they find, they can still have their own isolationist world, but it's going to be bigger and broader, and they know there's something else. Some people are going to choose to be like, I'll stay here. If the concern of Ron Cannon and those guys is, well, everyone's going to leave, then maybe your society's not that great. And
yeah, the fact that they want to leave does show a weakness in the society. I mean, I think the whole point of not wanting to move was just moving itself would be disruptive, and they don't have anybody bred to be movers to move the society and builders to rebuild the society. You know what I mean? Like they're not prepared for that eventuality. So you have to completely change what you're doing to rebuild the colony elsewhere.
Now we have to hire someone from outside, and that's going to be more outside coming in.
Yeah, I thought the argument Picard makes about the Prime Directive was interesting, and I like that Riker said, but that's not the Prime Directive, just in case, you weren't familiar enough with the Prime Directive to know.
I appreciated that.
Yeah, I liked both part, but I agree that it does not, the Prime Directive did not apply literally and legally speaking here, but the spirit of the Prime Directive applied here, because it is about not interfering in societies. And so I liked the way that Needle was threaded, and so often we get the opposite argument of the Prime Directive of, oh, well, the letter of the Prime Directive says we shouldn't interfere here, but the spirit, to protect them, we need to. And this was the opposite, So I appreciated that perspective.
And we talked about this before, that Picard finds the loopholes to get around the Prime Directive, and Kirk would just bust through and create a literal loophole rather than a figurative one. Although even that, I don't think he did that many times, but it's usually for the good, but still. Yeah.
Picard's the arrogant one who always thinks he's the one that has the right decision that nobody else can make. Yeah. So the end of the episode for Deanna and Aaron, Deanna's blaming herself for everything. And, I don't think she should blame herself for everything, but if she had not got involved with Aaron, I think it would be easier for him to stay instead of making it feel like a punishment for him.
I think you're right.
You have some blame. There. Just saying. Yeah. Although he's a big boy and he could have also resisted, so they're both to blame. I'm not blaming her exclusively.
Yeah, right. I liked his goodbye. I thought it was a great goodbye. I mean, as far as relationships ending, definitely in some of the TOS episodes, and some sense at TNG as well. You feel like these romantic things aren't earned. This one, although it happened fast, I believed the connection. I believed in it, and so the goodbye resonated for me, and I thought it was earned. So I did
think it was when he's talking about how there's all these women there that he's like genetically predisposed to. Right. I'm like, no, he likes damaged women. He likes the imperfect woman. Not that Troy's damaged by the conventional sense. And by their society, though, she is.
Right.
So I also did appreciate that he did not fight them in the end. He let them go, even knowing that there's going to be a big challenge. He understood he was a good leader, which he should be because he was bred to be. But that proved it. Like, he understood, I need to let these people go. That's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But also, doors open. You're welcome back. There's no grudge held against you. It was such a mature way of thinking about it. And I just really appreciated that conclusion.
Yeah, he's the part that belies Picard's concern. Like, maybe we did more damage than good. And Connor's like, no, we got this figured out. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
Figured it out. We'll figure it out. Go on your way, less genetically inferior starship captain.
Yes. So this episode was directed by one of our normal regulars, Winrich Colby. It was story by James Caan and Adam Belanoff. James Caan is best known to be a producer on Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, Melrose Place, the 90s Melrose Place, and he was a writer for All My Children for a couple years in the aughts.
Okay, so
supervising producer for Voyager for one season.
He must have done all the Troy Connor since
that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that on him.
this is his only writing credit for Next Gen, but he does have 4 writing credits for Voyager the season he was there. 3 teleplay bys, 1 written by. So, but this one he just has a story by credit.
Okay.
He also wrote 3 episodes of Tech War after this Shatner show. So keep it in the thing. And then the other guy, Adam Belanoff, is best known for being a producer on Cosby, the 90s Cosby with Madeline Kahn, and where he came back with Felicia Rashad, Major Crimes and The Closer, as well as he's a consulting producer on the new Fantasy Island and the old Murphy Brown as well. Right. In terms of writing, this is his only Trek writing credit. After this, he writes a few episodes of Wings, a few episodes of Murphy Brown, a few episodes of Cosby, The Closer. So he's a writer-producer. Right. And then the teleplay by was by Adam Belanoff, the second man I just mentioned, and Michael Piller, one of the head guy at that point. So still very in the family.
The thing Picard has in his office looks like, is that supposed to be like a small dilithium crystal?
I don't know what that was. He was picking up and looking at? Yeah, I'm not sure.
It looks like the crystals from Superman's Fortress of Solitude in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. So, and
we know Picard's dad's dead, so maybe
that's
maybe it's a crystal. It's a memory.
That's
crystal.
My last note. That was
okay. Alternate episodes.
So they decide, they're like, you know what? Maybe we've been wrong to do this genetic reading kind of thing or whatever, So they decide to stop doing it, and the planet, and actually the colony, ends up falling into ruin. And so that's what's blamed for it, is that they should have kept doing the genetic engineering. And once they stop, it actually does, that chaos does happen, and because they let inferior people live. So that is my alternate episode, dark as it may seem.
My alternate episode this was actually the Nazi planet from the original series revisited. And it was no longer run by strict Nazis because of the influence that Kirk and Spock had, but yet there were still some of the genetic engineering things.
I like that. So it was like, now I get they're not saying we're totally wrong. We're just not doing it right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But in that version of the episode, the message would clearly be no genetic engineering is appropriate. It would have a very different ending.
Yeah.
Because they'd be like, yeah, Nazis are Nazis.
That's great.
I just like tying it into the original series.
Yeah.
I think my alter episode for next week also ties into original series. So who is your annoyance?
Ron Canada. I don't like originalists, interpreters.
I can't be annoyed with Ron Canada because he's Ron Canada.
Yeah.
So, and he was genetically engineered to serve that role. So.
Maybe
I'm going to be annoyed with Troy.
Is my annoyance.
Yeah, I'm going to be annoyed with Troy, and I think I have to make it Troy and Aaron equally because, again, we don't want to blame one half of this couple. They both were in professional roles that should have known better and did not act appropriately. So blame both of them.
My one sports note for the episode is that I thought Connor, or whatever, the leader of the planet, looked like Steve Nash, who's now the head coach of the New Jersey Nets, but is I think he's in the Hall of Fame. If he's not, he will be. 2-time NBA MVP, Steve Nash, from Canada, to tie it back to Ron Canada. So I thought he looked a lot like him, which, Steve Nash isn't a bad-looking guy. I don't think he's a great-looking guy, but I'm just tying it back to this planet should have been better looking than it was. But I'm going to amend that in a second. So, yeah, that was my last note.
Interestingly, Ron Canada is not Canadian. He is American, born in New York City. Interesting. I don't know if that's really interesting, but
I'm just interested in the derivation of his surname, Canada, if that was his.
I am too.
He was born that way? Born with that name?
You mentioned he is known as the judge. He played the judge on The Closer, which was one of the shows that we mentioned the writer was a producer on. So maybe that was all. Maybe they cast him because of this. I don't know. Who do you want to have a drink with?
I mentioned earlier that Hannah kind of lifted me up. She was my thing in the episode, or at least for that part of the episode. That made it more interesting. Her journey, I thought, was the most interesting. I thought it was more interesting than the other guys. The science that scientific and moral and all those questions, I think, were the most interesting part of the episode. But I thought she was the most interesting character. So it'd be a drink with her. And she could learn a lot from me, possibly, since I don't live in an isolation world. Although I'm sure I'd learn a lot more from her.
Yeah, I am also going to choose Hannah. She seems the most... I mean, I think Aaron's a good choice, too. They're both somewhat open-minded and interested in the outside world. But I think she'd be more open about it. So we could have some, like, actually get into some issues. And clearly, I think Geordi... I kind of would have liked to have seen some acknowledgement that her society was wrong concerning Geordi. And I felt a little bit cheated that we didn't get that. So, yeah, I think she would have been the type to have that conversation with.
You're right. And you kind of already alluded to this.
Attractive, that too.
Yeah, but. You kind of already alluded to this, but yeah, if we'd had that extra couple of pieces for that relationship and taken away a couple of those from the Troy-Connor relationship, yeah, I think that would have been more interesting. But
agreed.
Yeah, they only had
agreed
48 minutes, whatever.
Yeah, it's like 44 at this point, and it's only going to get less as we go on.
Yeah.
So ranking this, this is tough. So I mentioned I was thinking middle to middle high, and now I'm looking at the season 5, and I'm thinking it's going to be low because season 5's been so good so far.
Okay.
So I feel like we got to start like at least 2/3 of the way down, just because of the strength of the season. Let's start with Violations, which was our most recent episode.
Yeah, I think I'd go above that.
I would too.
Yeah.
I am all for above. Above that is A Matter of Time.
We're definitely getting closer.
I think so too.
I think I'd still go above, I think.
I agree with you.
But it's
above that is Darmok.
We're definitely in the range where it's more of a thinking than I enjoyed the episode 1. I know I feel beholden to the importance of the Darmok episode, and we've kind of talked about that. I feel like Keith would definitely go above.
I think Keith might go above. I think I'm going to go below because of the importance of the Darmok episode.
I'm sorry. Keith would put Darmok above. I'm sorry. I said that back.
Oh, you...
So, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
Darmok above. Okay.
I think I would land in I would go whichever way you guys go. So we're going to speak for Keith. And I think that this is...
below Darmok?
Yeah.
I think Darmok is a comparable quality episode, even though Darmok is much better known and remembered.
Yeah, I think because I think you're getting into a similar kind of where you're talking about these concepts and things, and the episode. It's the actual arc of the episode isn't necessarily that great, but the concepts are interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that makes it ranked 10 of 13 so far.
Okay, that seems low, but
middle bottom. Well, it's
right.
Because once you get above Darmok, it's just all excellent episodes, in my opinion. Disaster, The Game, New Ground, Instant Row, Redemption, Unification. It's just been such a strong season. Yeah, that's right. So next week, Conundrum. When an approaching alien ship wipes their memory, the crew struggles to put back together what happened. Until then, live long
in your genetically inferior state and prosper.
Keith has nothing because he's not here.
He'll have something 2 weeks from now that you will relate back to this, but you will not remember.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?